Wisconsin is still voting today, in person. And it's a complex stew that involves the United States Supreme Court, the Wisconsin Supreme Court, Joe Biden himself, and of course the Republican Party, specifically in Wisconsin. And they are endangering so many people who are now going out to vote today. So on Saturday, Wisconsin's state legislature held a special session that was called for by the Democratic governor, Tony Evers. They were going to determine whether they should hold the election in person at all, right? And the Republican-controlled legislature rejected the governor's idea. So in a last-minute attempt, Governor Tony Evers issued an executive order yesterday in an effort to delay the Wisconsin primary. Because the Republicans are so unnecessarily and ridiculously committed to just ensuring that the democratic process has, that everyone is, lacking faith in the democratic process, they rejected the idea to postpone the primary, and then it was taken to the Wisconsin Supreme Court, where judges ruled 4-2 along ideological lines that Evers does not have the power as governor to unilaterally postpone the election, despite the fact that the state has a stay-at-home order in place due to the coronavirus pandemic. So the Republicans were so committed to this, that they took it to the Supreme Court in Wisconsin, and the very conservative court voted along ideological lines to reject the Democratic governor. There was another aspect of it that was taken to the United States Supreme Court, and of course, they sided with Republicans as well. SCOTUS refused to allow Evers to extend the deadline for absentee voting on Tuesday by just 6 days. So 5-4 vote, Ruth Bader Ginsburg dissented, and it was ruling on that more narrow issue, but it had domino effects. So the case before the U.S. Supreme Court arose from a separate lawsuit that sought to delay the elections, which include both presidential primaries, a statewide Supreme Court race, and local contests. A federal judge, despite expressing misgivings about the wisdom of proceeding with elections in a health crisis, said it was beyond his power to order a delay. So that gives you a sense of why the Republicans were so committed to pushing this primary forward. It's because it affects them on a state level in the Wisconsin race. So statewide Supreme Court race and local contest. So that's part of why they were so steadfast in this. The judge, by the way, William Conley of the Federal District Court in Madison, did require a 6-day extension to April 13th of the deadline to submit absentee ballots. The Federal Appeals Court in Chicago let the extension stand. Republican groups and the state legislature, which is controlled by Republicans, asked the Supreme Court to undo Judge Conley's ruling, calling it a deeply consequential and disruptive change. And that's what happened. So absentee ballots not extended, absentee voting not extended, and the Republicans can just move forward with an illegitimate election on the state level in Wisconsin. And of course, the presidential primary is going to be affected as well, which is why Joe Biden was absent on this issue if he was not openly advocating for the election to take place. Milwaukee, Wisconsin, it has a population of 600,000 people. They have only 5 polling locations. So a lot of poll workers didn't want to show up, obviously, because there's a statewide stay-at-home order and we are in the middle of a deeply deadly pandemic. And so they didn't want to go out. So 600,000 people, only 5 polling locations. They previously had 180. The Republican Party closed 175 polling locations. Do you know what that does? That concentrates the amount of people in a specific area. So it's quite counterproductive, but the Republicans don't care as long as they get their sham election through and they're able to just cement their power within the state of Wisconsin, which they've been clinging on to with a death grip. It doesn't matter. Now, let me just bring it back to Joe Biden. Well, first I'll just say, conservative Supreme Court, done it again. This is why, look, I'm going to vote for Joe Biden in the fall if he's the nominee, because it's terrifying to have Republicans cementing their power judicially throughout the country. It affects things like this. And obviously, the Republicans in Wisconsin are unconscionable. But Biden, Dave Weigel of the Washington Post tweeted this, and I think it's important to remember. Biden's Get Things Back to Normal campaign is really tested by questions about pandemic-friendly voting. On the Today Show, he hoped, quote, all the experts, both political parties and academia, could figure out vote by mail, yet he'd prefer to have in-person voting. It depends, he said. Basically, if you're looking for a Democrat banging the table and demanding national vote by mail ASAP, you have to look past Biden. Biden was continuously advocating for there to be in-person elections in Wisconsin. So I don't want to see hand-wringing from true blue people about the Republican Party here. Yeah, they're obviously egregious, disgusting representatives, and they don't care about their constituents. But the likely Democratic nominee, Joe Biden, was also pushing for in-person elections to go forward. And it's unconscionable.